Devin, if you want to do the opening prayer.
Let's pray. Father, we're just so thankful for this time together that we can have this group look at our governing charter documents as we realize that every organization has to have a foundation, and that foundation be articulated and described, and that is what this group is doing. It's looking back at our foundational documents. Thank you for today and for this community that we live in. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Yep. Please face the flag. Repeat up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Chairman Byrd.
Here.
Mr. Dancy.
Yes.
Ms. Schoon. Yes. Mr. Henderson Jansenius.
Here.
Mr. Ferrera.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Other board members, have you guys had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes from July 31st?
Yes.
Yes. Are there any comments or suggestions, or if there's not, we'll take a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Danzy, Schoon. Any debate? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so next on the agenda is audience participation, which then you can help me out with some of the, one is I don't know that we have any audience participation, so it might be, we don't, right?
I don't see any members from the public here.
Before we get to the public participation policy, just a couple, do you mind a couple housekeeping things? All right.
It's your meeting, sir.
Number one, there we go. Number one would it be possible to get a copy of the proposed agenda a week in advance and circulate it with the other board members for any sort of input on agenda items?
Sure. We'll get the agenda and the minutes out the week prior.
Great. That way, I don't know that we're going to have a lot of controversial agenda items, but I would at least like the opportunity to review it, and I'm sure everybody else has comments as well. That way we're prepared. Then on that, and then same thing, anything else that we're being asked to review, like the public policy or the public participation policy and things like that, the sooner the better we can have.
But the city has a policy similar. You want to see a copy of that? Is that what you're
Oh, I know we're going to consider the public participation policy. I mean, I know I was given a copy of it, just, Jonathan sent it to me a few minutes ago. I don't even know if everybody else has had an opportunity to review it. So things that we're going to be reviewing, if we could do that 7 days in advance too, that'd be amazing. Then this is getting way out over my skis, and please, other board members, tell me how you feel about this. I find, and I think there's gonna be a lot of debate and discussion amongst us, and doing it in a row is very challenging. Would you guys be open to sitting, and we don't have to do it today, at the end of the table?
Yeah, we can wrap y'all around.
Yeah, and then we can sit at the end, and that way it's just a lot easier to have a conversation with each other. Are y'all open to that?
Mhm.
Let's set it up that way next time. And then thought about just better discussions.
Once we get room 10 back open, Mr. Chairman, we'll probably move back down there, and it'll be a little bit more similar to like the commission seating, and we can kind of curve the tables. That might be better. It's just we had water intrusion damage down there, and so that's why we're kind of up here right now.
Okay.
So that might be an option too. Yeah. So
My goal for you guys as other board members is going to be to have an environment that fosters collaboration. I find this is very difficult to talk to, we're talking down the line at each other. So whatever we need to do to be able to, because there's going to be a lot of debate and collaboration that happens with this. So whatever we do to facilitate that, that would be awesome.
Understood.
So there's that.
If there was a table big enough that was round where you could sit eight of us or so around, it would be great.
Yeah, I'm open to any of that stuff. As long as it facilitates conversation.
Yeah.
I'm good. Okay, then let's discuss the audience participation policy. I guess, have you guys had an opportunity to review it? Thoughts, comments, suggestions?
Yeah.
Oh, that's another procedural thing. When we do these notices of the meeting and the agendas, what's the legal requirement do we have to publish those? Do we have to?
Yes.
When do those have to go out?
We usually try to get them out a week prior.
Is there like a legal, like 48 hours or?
No.
Okay.
No. If it's a special call, 48 hours is recommended, but we try to get everything out at least a week prior.
Yeah. And so this agenda was posted a week ago and I just assumed it was emailed to them.
I don't think it was sent to us for review and she never got any comments back. So
Then I missed it. Then I'm sorry. If it was sent out, I didn't see
no,
it.
she sent it to us.
Yeah.
Oh,
So what we'll start doing going forward is city manager's office, city clerk's office, we'll get it all buttoned up. And then when we post it live, you guys will also get an email with it, link to it and all that good stuff. And you'll see that it's live, but we can even have y'all, we typically don't, the body doesn't typically, they'll add items to it, but a lot of times staff drives the crafting of the agenda based on feedback from the body itself. But, I guess
We'll send it to you. We'll get it out.
We'll send it to you for sure.
In minutes.
well, if the goal is to post it publicly 7 days in advance, then my idea was to have it 7 days before it needs to go live.
Well, the notice of the meeting is posted 7 days in
There, okay,
advance.
that's okay.
The
But the
agenda-
agenda itself doesn't have to be
Not
posted.
necessarily. The agenda doesn't have to be posted at all, but we can send it out.
And I will fully follow my sort of, like, I'm in the community association world where we have to post the agenda 48 hours in advance, and really it's hard to modify from that, but that's not the same standard for this. Just notice that there is going to be a meeting and then we can revise the agenda. Okay, all right.
But we'll get it out to you.
Or
Yep.
is 7 days sufficient to comment on the agenda and then we can have something when we walk into the meeting? All right, great.
And I would add that if we go with your building a house plan, we should know on the agenda what is going to be the topics for that meeting. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just ask you put that in there so that we would know what to, ask management any questions or whatever before we get here.
100%.
Yeah, just so we know, so we don't ever come blind. Well, what are we going to talk about today? That's just a waste.
Purely my anecdotal experience, I'm sure you guys have all experienced this as well. Like, there will be a degree of preparation. I know we're not preparing weeks in advance. It's probably going to be in the few leading up days, but it's certainly not going to be the hours in advance, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I know we're probably going to review this stuff on, what's today, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. I'm fine with that. If that week is plenty of time.
Oh, yeah.
And then hopefully one of my goals today is to walk out with a pretty solid game plan framework, not agenda necessarily, but schedule moving forward
Yes.
with kind of these discrete sections that we're going to go over. So, all right. So if we're good with the 7 days, that'll be amazing. Back to the public participation policy thoughts. JP.
I know we discussed it last time about limiting it to agenda items for that day. Is that, I don't know that that's here. That was I know that we had some discussion about that last time. That was my only sort of addition to it. If we want to fire that debate up again, if we're going to limit it to just the agenda items that are being discussed on that day or something else.
I think that's my concern as well. If we're not going to post the agenda, if it's not necessary, then it wouldn't be necessary to limit it to agenda items.
It will be posted.
It will
Not
be.
necessary, but we do post it on the website. It's posted on the website.
And
The notice goes out to the newspaper and the county website. That's where the notice goes, but the agenda is posted on the city's website.
And I think part of the plan here will be to have a schedule through kind of to the end of the proceeding. So hopefully that'll
That's
give
my
them
goal
enough
for the
time.
meeting,
Right.
to walk out with that. Do you guys mind if we just call each other by first names?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I mean, Cecile, I know this was a thing this was a priority for you. So what do you think about the policy?
The notice, I think,
No, the public participation policy.
it looks fair. I think there was some little issue that we were talking about with a little difference of opinion. And I can't remember exactly what it was last time. It was something to do that do people have to be here physically to participate? And I feel like we have elderly, we have people who are disabled, and they should be able to connect with us. So if it's possible to have a line that they can call into, not anything really complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does complicate it, ma'am. I mean, and also the concern, you know, we potentially could use Zoom, but you really want to control that because you have no idea.
We're not using Zoom now? What is this?
For recording.
Oh,
It's just recording, yeah. And so, I mean, if you, there's no telling who, you have to allow everybody. We have people that would intensely try to get on and be disruptive and all that. So, I mean, our building is fully ADA accessible. We provide assistance to get people what they need to do. We record these and they're posted in addition to all the agendas and minutes that will be posted on the city's website agenda section, just like our city commission meetings and CRA board meetings. Likewise, this is being recorded. It is posted on the city's YouTube station. So even if they can't make the meeting, they can watch the minutes and they can, or the minutes, review those. They can watch the meeting after the fact, and they can always email staff. We would then forward any of those emails received to all 5 of you. And that's a rule that we have, is that, if there's any information that goes out, it doesn't just go to one of you. So if you ever get something from staff, you can assume that all 5 of you have received it.
What do you guys think about the remote access?
I think it creates a lot of problems. I'd rather them be here physically.
Right, but I guess the thing is, we have disability, we have finances. A lot of our constituents don't have cars. So I think if I hear what you're saying, Jonathan, may I call you that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Or do you go by John or John?
Jonathan, per my mother.
Jonathan, I think you're right that it could be abused. People just, taking up time and causing us a lot of problems. I would say that this should be the general rule, but if we're presented with a case where someone tells us ahead of time, I want to participate, I want to be active, but I have these limitations, then I think we should be flexible, not just, we should maybe make it known that if someone has these issues, they need to contact us, the city, earlier.
I mean, honestly,
It's on the bottom of the agenda.
Yes.
There's ADA compliance requirements. If you have a need, you can contact the city.
I'll tell you, you talk about my association world because we do these board meetings all the time. We have them via Zoom and it works really, really well. You post the Zoom link on the notice, and I mean, I would say, Cecile, I would support trying to do it. And if it becomes a problem, then we can address it. Like, oh my gosh, we have all these random people showing up and interrupting the meeting. But to just simply attach an invitation on that Zoom and put it on the notice, it's 100% of my associations do it, and it works very, very well.
Yeah, I think when I see any entity going to that extent, like your associations to welcome everybody, even though it may not be utilized very much or could be abused down the road, it means a lot. It sends a message, everybody is welcome. And the city is going to double down to make sure that invitation is out there.
I think it's going to define our success on how much public participation we actually have, how much we encourage. And initially, the last meeting I was on, trying to build consistency with the commission with how that meeting was being portrayed, and they were limiting to agenda items. But I've had a different perspective. I feel like that meeting is more of a decision type meeting. This is more collaboration. I mean, we're going to make decisions here, right? The goal is to make decisions with as much feedback from the community as we possibly can. And we are limited to the things on the charter, right? Or any ideas that could potentially come into the charter. So I would be fine with the Zoom meeting. I would be fine. I think at the end of this, I measure what would success look like, and I'm going to measure that by how much public participation we actually did have.
Well, we also, related to this, we also talked about it sometime in the near future, setting up meetings in the community in different places so that to entice people to give us their inputs. And when we make our final recommendations, the participation of the community in our work, I see what you mean,
No, you're
All right. I know.
It might work. No, I just realized.
Make.
Yeah, start to talk about turning your back. That's- Yeah.
I mean, hopefully the selling of the idea is better because people would have participated and given us their inputs.
Sorry.
I have a question. So is the email we provided to the commission public now? Right, so they can email us as board members if they have a matter. Okay, thank you.
Ron, do you have a feeling one way or the other?
I think that when the public realizes that we are not the decision makers, that there will be less participation. Because all we're going to make is a recommendation to the commission. That's where the decisions will be. And my experience has been when people figure out that you're just going to make a recommendation, they'll wait until the decision makers are ready to make the decision. And this will be in front of the voters if we make any changes to the charter anyway. So there'll be some education that will come one day, a year plus from now, when that happens. But as far as participation, I think it's good, but I would limit to whatever is on the agenda for that day. Whatever, if our next meeting and we're talking about makeup of the commission and, that, then limit it to just that. If somebody does show to have questions.
So,
Because we are not the city commission. So I think we can limit it to whatever is on the agenda.
for sure. Let me ask one more question, and I'm going to actually kind of propose a slate here. Who is allowed to participate from a public comment standpoint? Is it only citizens that reside, or is it business owners, or anybody that shows up?
Anybody, it could be from Alaska. They could be from Callaway. Anybody.
All right.
Is that something we want to change?
No, I just didn't know what the default rule was. No. I think to a certain extent, this is a little bit of a solution looking for a problem at this point where.
Dad, I think when the commission looked at this, Mr. Chairman, board members, is that we are allowed to limit it to items only on the agenda, but you cannot limit it to, only folks like from the city of Panama City or business owners. That was the guidance that we got from the city attorney's office. So.
Tell me if the board's agreeable with this kind of like slate of changes. Number one is we can start with the public participation that the city commission uses, just update it to reflect that it's the advisory board and that type of stuff. I would like to see that each speaker is limited to 5 minutes rather than 3, just because of the collaborative nature of this, with a little bit of discretion to the chair to extend time if necessary. Then limit the conversation to agenda items. That's why it's so important that we have an accurate agenda. And then also, and this may not necessarily go in the public participation policy, but that we do add a Zoom feature for additional comments. And then I think I will be the first one to acknowledge that if it becomes cumbersome or disruptive, and I think Cecile will do the same thing, then we can always address the policy at that. But I would like to start being as inclusive as absolutely possible and then narrow it down rather than saying, hey, and I believe the city has a great ADA accommodation policy. I understand all that other stuff, but I think just adding a Zoom link to the notice, and then, we're either going to get wild participation or none. And so let's cross that bridge when we get there. So with the addition of Zoom meetings, 5-minute comment with additional chair discretion and limiting conversation to the agenda items. Is that further thoughts on those? Is there somebody who wants to make a motion?
So moved.
Second. Brandon's.
I'll second it.
All right, any additional debate or discussion? All right, all in favor? Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just point out that Mr. Tinkow, the Deputy Supervisor of Elections, has joined us.
Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Good.
Must be interested in what y'all are up to.
There you go.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'll keep it short. So I'll just stay in the background. The main purpose of me being here is just from the election side, how it will impact the voters of your city when you make these decisions, and which election or presenting it to the voters and on the ballot, or what ballot comes. Just here for that purpose.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Discussion of charter review procedures. If we could, just to kind of keep this moving and simple, we had talked about doing, let's set a schedule for what the meeting, that tempo looks like. I think Jonathan or maybe Nevin had suggested it being the third Thursday, and I know we just picked that. You got to pick something. I think Cecilia may have had a few conflicts here and there, but can we just pick a week and a day and then we can schedule around it? Like, do we want to start with the baseline of what did you guys have? Was it the third Thursday, fourth Thursday?
Yeah, I thought we said the fourth.
Fourth Thursday of.
So if we start with that by default and we go to September 25th, October 23rd, and so on, do we have just wild conflict with that schedule?
September, this is the 4th? The 4th? Yeah, the 4th. I do have a conflict with that, but
With which day?
September 25th.
Okay, I do as well. Okay.
October 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd be inclined to want to suggest is that we stick with the fourth Thursday, because we can, I mean, my summer 2026 is not booked up by any stretch. And if we need to adjust the September meeting, that's fine, but with the other ones generally fall in line.
The February 26th, my daughter's getting married.
We'll tell her to postpone it.
Yeah. There's enough time.
I think generally the fourth Thursday, yes, I'm available.
All right. So let's kind of put a pin in that. And then if we start having our first substantive discussion coming up around the 5th or around the 25th, but not the 25th, Brandon, were you suggesting April 2nd?
Oh.
I think
Sorry, October 2nd.
Yes.
It's-
Court's closed that day, so I can do that day.
Why is it closed?
Yom Kippur.
Oh, fair enough. Cecile, would October 2nd work for you?
Yes.
Ron, are you good with October 2nd?
Yes, that's fine.
Let's do that. And then if we do February 26th, Cecile, would you want to do it a week sooner or a week later? Like February 19th or March 5th?
March 5th. I can do either one, depending if there's anybody has any other conflicts.
That's not our spring break, is it? It's usually the second or third week,
Probably the 26th is spring break.
probably the week of March
No,
8th or March 15th.
spring break is March 16 through 20.
Okay, all right. Then somebody pick one, either the February 19th or March 5th.
March 5th is better.
And then we're all still good with 11:30 and start at 12. So can we get a motion to establish our calendar on the fourth Thursday of each month, with the exception of, we'll do October 2nd in lieu of September 25th, and then March 5th in lieu of September 26th.
So we also need to plan for November and December. Christmas and Thanksgiving are also on the fourth Thursdays.
Oh, sorry. Well, we have November 20th already on.
Oh, November 20th.
Are you going to be busy that day?
So we do have November 20th.
Okay. And then,
I'll have to pick a different one in December.
I'd be more inclined to move the December meeting later and do it like January 8th.
I agree.
We try to travel that week before Christmas, and we just may have to miss December. So with January 8th in lieu of, I guess we don't have anything scheduled for December right now. You think we need it? I'll tell you what, one of the things I wrote down here was we can always cancel a meeting, right? So
That's the city commission, just for your information. We typically combine the November meetings into one and the December meetings into one. So, I mean, that's not You guys only meet monthly, so it's a little bit more difficult, but you could conceivably just not have a December meeting.
Why don't we do this? For that January 8th meeting, let's intentionally leave the agenda open. That way it can be either a catch-up meeting or a follow-up meeting or something along those lines, and it'll be easily cancelable if we need to. Okay. Ron, you good with that?
Sure.
Because that'll be after we'll have we'll have 2 October meetings, a November meeting. We'll have, 2 October, November, we'll have 3 meetings. That could be a good chance to either, hey, we need to collaborate, we need to figure something out, we need to double back on something, or if we need to cancel it, we're not now all of a sudden a month behind on things.
You'd still do the January 22nd though, correct, Mr.
Correct.
Chairman?
Correct. Okay. All right. So October 2nd, October 23rd, November 20th, January 8th, January 29th, March 5th, March 26th, and so on.
January 22nd. It's the 4th Thursday, not the last Thursday.
Did I say 22nd? It says 29th.
No, January 1st is the first Thursday, so the 4th Thursday would be January 22nd.
All right. So it's all good. Typo here. So January 22.
Yep.
All right, is everybody good with that? Yeah, we can do a motion to set that schedule as well.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First. I'll go on there.
Just for the record, you can't make motions, but you are able to second motions if you so desire.
Okay, great. All right, thank you guys. All right, review procedures. With the idea being we try to fill out this schedule. I've never reviewed a city charter before. What I said to you guys was purely just me trying to get my head around how to review this thing. When I read the charter on an airplane to and from Nashville, I was like, the charter makes sense. But in my opinion, and please just push back on this, reading it, Article 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 just came very clunky because some work together and some are more independent. And so when I was reviewing this thing and I said, we ended up circulating an email, kind of the house framing analogy, building a foundation, the walls, the windows, and the trim. That was just kind of my way of figuring out a way to attack problems like this. But I'm open to suggestions. If there's agreements or strong opposition, please let me know. I've never done this before.
I liked it. I thought, I've heard the building a house analogy. I actually use it all the time at work in operations. You always start with a strong foundation. So that's what I think we should start with, and then be objective and be clear about what are the foundations, what is the roof. Come with that analogy, and then pull it out of the charter, and then be strategic in what we do address. That way it gives us that 4-week period or 3-week period between each meeting to really come prepared. We engage the community, we understand what we're asking, what we're looking for. And it's completely objective.
Ron, what do you think?
Well, I like the plan. I think it worked well.
So let's discuss if we're going to go over the foundation first. And I suggested that be Article 2 along with Article 7 and along with Article 13, where it kind of all plays into the authority of the city council versus the authority of the city manager and then the other appointed positions. Do you think there's anything else, any other articles that need to be kind of debated or discussed at the same time? And we'll take our time. I mean, we're here until 1 o'clock, so there's no.
I'm gonna look back at your email. I generally thought you did a very good job clustering like things.
This is, I mean, Jonathan, Jeanette, Nevin, I mean, please give me, y'all live and breathe this document. And so I don't know, like where, because Nevin, I'll put you on the spot here. Article 3, the powers, we're talking about fire departments, power over waterways. I mean, is that integral to a foundation? I don't think I had Article 3 on my list here. Or is that something we can probably review in time?
Either way, I mean, your approach, I think, is commendable. Everyone else, every other charter review committee that we looked at kept asking Caroline, how did they do it? Well, they just started at Article 1 and went to Article 10. Yeah, which logically probably isn't the best way to do it, except that's how they did it. So I think whether 3 gets thrown into 1 or whether you do an independent, I would be done either way.
I think it fits in, the foundation. It's pretty powerful. And that's where you see conflict, down the road when those things are not well delineated and people try to get in others' lanes. So I think it's important to establish that.
There's nothing holding us to the number of articles or what the articles were before, right? So we can write a new Article 1, kind of establishing the power separations of each office, and then go from there. That's where we want to start. Or
Like, I don't want to get like super tactical today, but like, for example, when I'm looking at section 53, where it talks about power to prevent fires, wouldn't that be reviewed along with Article 12 of fire protection?
I would consider that to be framing. That's going to be more department specific. Maybe not foundation focused. Foundation, I would say city commission, city manager, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
The department specific items would probably be more framing.
My objective is just we walk out with a plan for how to address all the substantive things in here. So I am kind of going a little bit line by line at this point. Or if we say, all right, we're going to take 53 and line that up with fire. And then we're going to take 54, which admittedly, I don't really know. Power over waterways. I mean, that might be something that's owned independent. I don't know how often does that get used, Devin?
Not often.
Yeah.
Well, mentioned a lot during the water access on Beach Drive.
Touche. Okay.
I think it happens quite a bit. I mean, every time they dredge something, they're using their power, their authority to dredge whatever volume of water.
But that's not the type of thing that goes into like the underlying who makes the decisions, whether it's
Gives them the
manager,
authority
council.
to do.
Sure,
That's what this
gotcha.
is
Yeah.
saying,
Okay.
the authority.
All right, then maybe we're not too far off. If the next. And I really don't know if these are things that you get hashed out in one meeting or if it takes 2.
I think the foundation will take more than one.
Yeah. Right.
I do. Because in that foundation, you're going to have, you may have precincts in North Panama City. We talked about that last time we were here. What are we going to do? Are we going to recommend increasing the commission size? All of that's going to be in the foundation. And I foresee that being more than one meeting.
yes, I was going to say that Article 4 of elections kind of interlocks with the foundation power part.
And
But it might be
the whole discussion of elections, some of us may want to move them from the present to November cycle. So all that to me is the foundation.
I agree.
So do we want to include Article 4 elections in some of our initial discussions?
I believe that's foundational.
That's very much.
That's my opinion.
I think we're going to have to debate it no matter what. When we start talking about the powers of the office, how does that office get elected?
Okay, so with the idea being the first two meetings, we discuss Article 2, which deals with city commission. And make sure we're correct. So the foundational discussions would be Article 2, city commission. Article 4, elections. Article 7, city manager. Guess that would be it. I had in here Article 13, but I think that we're talking about is those layers down, maybe more framing rather than like if you're going to do clerk, city officers, employees, things like that, that stuff may go together more than where I had it to begin with. So I'm okay.
So Article 8 is the attorney.
Yeah, that sounds-
So you have it listed here.
We're working that one.
Seems like we should probably break up the foundation into two separate meetings.
Yeah, we are. We are.
Problem with suggesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
But I think that what actually happens is the city attorney and the city clerk actually do have controlling directives to the commission, so it's almost foundational.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I agree with your putting the city clerk in the foundation. I think we should add city attorney. Well, might be the authority that they had is pretty strong.
So the first meeting could be Article 2 and Article 4, the elections. Then the second meeting could be city manager, city attorney, and city clerk.
I love that.
And that should cover the foundation.
So, okay. So we have this kind of larger bucket of foundation. The first conversation will be about Article 2, the city commission, along with the elections. The byproduct of those discussions will then go right into Articles 7.
I think what we decide on Article 2 will change
Right.
the other ones.
Well, I have seven written down, 8 written down, and then 13. Those all kind of get lumped in together. And then the next part would be Article 5, city officers, employees, and departments generally. Do you think that's a layer down from?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
So when are we gonna get to the first meeting is third meeting is gonna be the employees? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're workshopping right now is meeting 1 is Articles 2 and 4, which deals with elections and city council or city commission. The next meeting, which relates, is Articles 7, 8, and 13, which is city manager, clerk, and city attorney. The next meeting would be Article 5, city officers, employees, and departments. And then that would also line up very nicely for our January meeting. That's kind of our floating meeting. We could come back after that and talk about finances. And that's where we can get into 15 and 16. Yeah, 16. We have Article 15, taxation, 17, sorry about that.
Then Article 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything got removed. from
Right.
those others.
Yeah.
We're gonna move Article 3 in with Article 5 for the November 20th meeting, the powers and the employees.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Article 3,
Yes, yes.
so we'll do 5 and 3 on this 20th. Oh, 6. I feel like this today.
What we did on this plain version is that we took out things that just had already been repealed. Not the official charter. The official charter is yes.
Okay, then now I am kind of going line by line here. So Articles 12, sorry, gotta read my Roman numeral. Articles 11 and 12, police protection, fire protection. Those can be, what are we on number? Like 4 or 5?
I think that would be the fifth. So we're getting down into the departments.
Correct.
Now, is Article 1 a requirement?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then where would we suggest that Article 17, public utilities? Does that get reviewed kind of along with police and fire and utilities? Or am I?
I think it kind of goes with the powers one, right? We were talking.
What do you mean, Jimmy?
Then Article 3, the powers of waterway and access. And
It's got the fire and then the waterways and everything. Public utilities and waterways, those are distinct, aren't they?
Okay.
I mean, they both deal with water, but
Yep.
Drinkable water and.
yeah. Let's bring it water. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Waterways.
So, yeah, for the fifth meeting, the departments, fire and police. Are you suggesting that the sixth meeting be public utilities?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay,
Might as well be, yeah.
seems like fire department and police is gonna be a big discussion.
Possibly. Copying somebody's homework in class here.
Everything you're doing is a public record, so.
There you go.
Say,
Your notes are mine right there.
I've literally gone to your email then.
I will fully acknowledge I'm very much like a macro guy. And so as we get into the micro here, so if we look at the schedule, at the end of this month, we would discuss city commission and what do I have here? Elections and elections, yeah. End of October, we discuss the manager, clerk, attorney position. November, we discuss the next layer down of positions, the city officers, employees, different departments. That rolls into, we have an open December, and then January 8th, we can come back with an open agenda, at least at this time. It's a good idea. Kind of wrap that stuff up, or if we don't need it, we don't need it. And then we roll into February, and that's when we start talking about the finances. And then we go into March and we talk about fire, police. And then we go into April and we talk about utilities. Do you feel like that's a decent tempo, or is that too fast? Is that too slow?
I think we'll know as we get into it.
Yeah, I think it depends on how.
We won't know till we get there.
Yeah.
Nevin, we touched on this. Okay, so we need a motion on that. Are we good? Do we have plenty of notes on that?
if you just want to confirm, the first meeting will be Article 2 and 4. The second is 7, 8, and 13. Third is 5 and 3. The fourth is 14, 15, and 16. The fifth is 11 and 12. And the sixth is 17 and 18. That's what I have.
Cecile, does that sound right?
Yeah.
I would advise, Mr. Chairman, calling for a vote so no one can say I didn't vote for that.
All right.
With the provision that it's,
Y'all can modify it.
yeah, it can be modified.
All right. Is there a motion to approve that schedule agenda going forward?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other debate or anything else?
With the provision in my motion of that we would freely go back and modify as needed.
100%. Yeah, we can include that in the motion. Yeah, and amend as needed. Totally in support of that. All right, all in favor?
Wait,
I'm sorry.
with the discretion of the chairman, we may have our first meeting and not get as far as we think. So I don't want it to be in concrete that on the second meeting, we have to talk about this. If we're building this bicycle as we're riding it. So it may take longer than we all think. And it may take shorter than.
And I assume that was the spirit of Cecile's.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
I'm-
Yeah.
If we're not comfortable, then the chairman can say, here's the next agenda, we're going to do this. And
I think that's also proves the point of why we need the agenda ahead of time so we can circulate with each other. And then I'm not going to say that, hey, we're moving on regardless.
Right.
Yeah,
That's fine.
we're aligned.
And I think, as a matter of course, every last item on the agenda should be preparation for next meeting. And that way you'll set out what you're preparing for the next meeting.
For sure. But this will help us tremendously when it comes to, getting either citizen input or who we're talking to as opposed to just, what do you think about the entire charter? To me, that's very hard to, it all works together. But if you kind of say, hey, we have this thing coming up and then build out from there, it just makes it a lot easier. So, okay, I think we're aligned on the motion. You clear? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, great. Any other housekeeping things, other thoughts, concerns, anything, any way we can do this better? Oh, I have something. So Nevin, can you walk us through, I kind of have a vision of how the actual pen to paper is going to work, but how is it going to work with you as actually I don't assume we're drafting language. I assume we're going to kind of give you wish lists and here's what we want substantively. And then the city attorney will draft it and put pen to paper. Is that accurate?
Yes. I mean, we'll act as staff just like we do with the city commission, which is you talk about what you want. We'll go back. We'll work as appropriate with Jan, with Jonathan, any other department head we need to get input on, and then we'll present it back to you ahead of the meeting. So you have an opportunity to look at it. You can, and feel free to call us anytime with any comments or questions. It's, even though this is a collaborative process, we are subject to sunshine law and public records. So the request is I send it to you. You make your comments, let's say I'm sending it, or if Jonathan's, you make your comments back to me. And then there might be another draft that you see before we ever get to a commission meeting, just based upon, reactions, or you call or something. But probably not, but we'll get a draft out and we'll talk to you. We won't just see you once a month. We'll talk to you ahead of time, get your thoughts and comments. And it's been very helpful with I'm not suggesting we have weekly meetings, but just so you know how Jonathan operates and is that we have weekly meetings with commissioners. So you know what they're thinking, and then you use that collective information, and I'm there too, and Jan to put stuff together. So hopefully when it gets there, it's not a totally foreign concept to them. So we'll informally just stay in touch, and we do plan on doing the drafting as necessary to move forward. But you'll be wanting to know, well, what other jurisdictions have done this?
Yeah.
How have other cities attacked this, whatever the issue is? And that's why Caroline's here. She's gonna find out. Caroline is great as far as doing, that research for us to see how others have tackled this problem. We're not the only city in Florida. They've all gone through these issues, and there's an amazing amount of diversity in how they're run, even whether it's strong mayor, weak mayor. I heard of something new that Caroline already knew about, the 5 commissioners with the mayor that has a veto. I mean, it's risky. Yeah, that's what. We're here to help you with that information.
Is that participation done at the meeting or is that something we do beforehand? How will that work?
Well, we'll give you a call, just check in with you, or you call us. But if we haven't heard from you, we're going to try to reach out to
Well,
each of you.
I read through a lot in your memo. It covered a lot of stuff, so I'm not sure I pulled it all in to understand it. But in terms of how the city manager works with the commission, I think you put several examples in the memo, or somewhere I saw several examples in the notebook. I don't know if you could pull them together and just like, here's 6 different methodologies, just sort of spoon feed us each time. Like we've sort of set forth what we think we're gonna talk about. So what would be helpful to me, because I like to be spoon fed, is here's 5 or 6 examples of how power is partitioned amongst the commissioners and the city manager. Just send us that.
So you'd like 5 or 6 examples of how other communities have structured their city commission in addition to how we already have?
Yes. And if you come across something that either the League of Cities or you yourself or Nevin thinks this is really interesting, it's not necessarily local, could be Tampa, just pull that name. This is, look at this, because that really helps my mind get more prepared to have debate. And to do that with each monthly meeting, examples of how others have done it before, either their language or however,
This is helpful discussion, because what I thought I was going to offer up, if you're interested, we now know that our next meeting, we're going to talk about the commission and elections. So I wanted to give you some background information ahead of time. We could do what Cecile's talking about. Also on elections, I wanted to give you an ordinance that the city commission considered but did not adopt that would have moved the election dates to the general election. And there may be some other information along those lines. And then there's an interesting question that we'll give you our feedback on, and that is, why are we even talking about it in the charter if the city commission can do it by ordinance, and the city can change the election dates by ordinance? So why would you put it in the charter? I think there is a couple of commissioners that would be interested in having y'all talk about it, though, in a charter. Obviously, if you put it in the charter, they can only be changed by a charter vote, by a vote of. That's what we feel. But those are all good questions, and we're going to look at that.
I think we're all pretty much, and most Americans, and certainly looking around this group, we've been educated to the point that we have constitutional, foundational things. We have a federal constitution, then comes our state constitution. That's how we think of government. Mm-hmm. And I think this flows with the charter, because I saw that question. Well, you really could just make another ordinance, but I don't think people feel comfortable with that. I don't think citizens feel comfortable with that. They want a foundational underlying document that's been thought through and that kind of puts guidelines and big structure, things. And then the smaller, more detailed things go in the ordinances. Because otherwise we'd be like New Orleans, like the French. They have codes for everything, and it's a totally different way of looking at it.
Some things should be harder to change.
Something should be harder to change, and I think citizens, myself included, I feel comfortable with an overarching general concept and then jump from there if we need more specifics. So I would recommend against dumping everything on the city commissioners to make ordinances. Also, the city commission, their viewpoints change over time, and with elections, the changing of who is sitting at the table. And some things I think citizens just want to know are going to be there. So I would speak against pushing too much on the ordinances.
That's a real fundamental philosophy or foundational issue when it comes to charter review, because you may decide you want to recommend something that doesn't have to be in the charter, but you feel it's so important it ought to be in the charter.
Right.
Just the point that you're making.
Yes.
But that's for you all to and maybe the election date is one of those issues. You'll see that you then have to. If you have a new election date, what does that do to existing terms? Well, you can either lengthen terms or shorten terms. I mean but those are. But I was going to give you that. That's an example, not so much to talk about it, other than give you an example of the information that we'd like to provide a couple of weeks out.
I love it.
Before the meetings.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay.
Very.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys mind if I just share some overarching thoughts here, like where my head's at with this stuff?
Yeah.
One, this has been very interesting and very thoughtful, just kind of going through, I hate to analogize it to the forefathers, but you kind of do start thinking through how do you set up a system that works when it's your best friend in charge or your worst enemy in charge, right? And there's a balance between putting in so many constraints in a charter that somebody can't function and the responsibility of the citizenship to elect sound representatives, right? On one hand, I guess you could theoretically have a charter that just says city council, city commission, do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't run afoul of any other sort of laws that the state or the federal government has. It's very broad authority to run the city however you want. And I suppose when you've got your team in charge, that sounds great. But then all of a sudden you don't have your team in charge and they're running rampant. And I think about that, at every level of governance. It's great when it's your guy doing the stuff, but when it's not your guy using the same executive powers, you're like, well, wait a second, how can they do this? It's like, well, you can't just like the outcome, therefore you support the process. So that's something that I'm wrestling with a lot, is how much of this goes in the charter that you think about those. I think you said this because I wrote down these guardrails. What are these things that we put in this, hey, as long as you play within this sandbox, do what you want to. That's our responsibility as citizens to elect competent people. But we also got to make sure you don't do some crazy decision and I'm not pushing this, but I start thinking of fiscal constraints of saying, hey, is there some degree of fiscal responsibility or spending authority or debt authority or something like that, where it's you guys, me personally, I would not want the city, and I think they can do this now, not good or bad, but I think this is the case. You could just mortgage the city forever and to pay for some giant project, and that's a city council, a city commission authority level right now. Whereas that gives me heartburn to think that we can take on some massive debt load that my grandkids are going to have to pay. So that would be something along the lines of, if you're going to bond off some project at some degree, having some sort of citizen impact, that if we're going to make this investment. So I think about those types of things. But yeah, it is a real balance between what goes in the charter that now. Because I'll give you another example. And again, I guess I'm going to say this 1,000 times in my meetings here. I have had community associations that have had bad experiences with bad boards and then put things in their governing documents to where the other boards can't function. And just understand the spirit of this example. one of my associations says that they can't spend more than $5,000 without owner approval. And I'm like, y'all can't function. And they came back to me and they go, well, this one board spent too much money. And I'm like, I understand that, but you need to elect better representatives, not make it so that your current board can't function anymore. Because every time we want to go buy a new pool pump, we have to go get owner approval for it. So that's kind of the weighing here that at least I'm going through.
Process paralysis.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what other, I guess, big picture here, are there any, like, JP, where's your head out? I mean, have you thought about this stuff, or where are you at?
In terms of what, though? In terms of
Just kind of overall thoughts on this process and where you're at and things that maybe you want to share something on the, hey, this is kind of what's on my mind.
no, nothing really. I like the beginning with the separation of powers and the framework that we've established. I think a lot of it is just going to be getting into the details and starting that conversation. I was thinking, is there a way to have a staff report kind of as part of every month? You know, we were talking about getting that out a couple of weeks before, kind of the same thing, just make it, you know, especially as we get into some of the, you know, more specialized things like utilities, things that I'm not sure what the issues, the hot issues in city law are with utilities, or those are the kind of, as we start to get into the more specialized things, at least some direction. I don't mind doing my own research, but I don't even know where to start with something like that.
To speak for Jonathan, if you have an item, and for Jan, if you have an item on your agenda that says preparation for the next meeting or discussion, at that time, the three of us can give you, we'll think about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And we'll, like I gave you a little preview of things I'm thinking about now that I know, we could all give you a preview of information we think could be relevant, sound it out on you, and then potentially do. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to have it as an agenda item or something kind of every time, because I think that will
Yeah.
at least give us some direction.
Some things that I would like to see between now and maybe a couple of weeks before the next meeting is, like, what are examples of cities in Florida that currently have the weak mayor system, some that have the strong mayor system, some that have the commission city manager system. I think that's what we have. We have a commission city manager where it's,
Yeah, city manager, form of government,
yeah.
or weak mayor.
Yeah, and where does it work well at? Where has it not worked well at? Where they've made changes? Maybe some whys behind why they made some of those changes. Just kind of give me some guidance as I start to dive deeper into it. Like, I want to kind of understand, how long have we had this system? You know, and where's some of the faults currently in the system that we have that's been, I've heard it from three commission boards now, the back and forth between city manager and commission. That's not my job. It's not my job. Well, whose damn job is it? Like, it's still not clear. We've been governing through this charter for 100 years, 60 years now, right? So how do we eliminate some of that cloudiness and we provide the clarity? But ultimately, maybe it's a hybrid, and that's what we'll have to come back and figure out. But how do we pull out what's working well in other cities across the state of Florida? And then who's made changes and why they made changes and why are they on their current system?
I think, what's working well would be a matter of opinion, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that we can tell you why the changes were made,
Yeah.
if changes were made, but I don't know whether
Yeah, if I can elaborate. So taking case myself, my interview was public. So you can have the same form of government, a city manager form of government with a weak mayor, and you can have a city manager who really leans hard into the commission, and the commission allows to some degree that city manager to function almost like a commissioner. Or you have a city manager like myself who, you know, I'm not here to put pressure on the board. I'm not here to try to act like an elected official. I'm going to follow the direction and execute that which they want me to. So, yeah, but that's, you could have that in different cities with the same type of government. What now?
You have 5 different bosses potentially. I mean,
Well, that's why I have 5 different meetings every single week. So,
I think there's a way, and some of this information is where we
sticks with Jan.
some of this stuff out. I've seen systems where the commission are accountable to certain departments. And I know that's few and far between, where one commissioner is accountable to the fire department, one commissioner is accountable to the police department. I've seen those, I've read about those
There's-
systems.
There's some value
There
in
might
that.
be because
Accountable, or do you mean over?
a liaison.
Yeah.
there's a difference between accountability and responsibility. I
Yeah.
think we would have to clearly define that because ultimately you're accountable
Right.
as city manager, right?
Correct. To the board.
Yeah.
All 3 of us are.
Yeah.
All 3 of us serve at the pleasure of the board.
Do you mind? I can probably put a little bit of a bow on this. Perhaps if we're meeting on the 2nd, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, by September 19th, if you guys provide simply a menu of options, and that's probably not a great word. The board is struggling because I don't know what's out there, and not an evaluation of what's good or bad. That's why we get paid the big bucks, right? I got you. That's right. But if you're like, hey, here is sort of the plethora of ways to do this, and then we can debate it, we can look at it, we can go to our own independent research on that type of stuff. Like, I don't expect some 10-page memorandum on the pros and cons of all these systems, but just something that at least says there's a strong mayor, there's a weak mayor, there's kind of like these sort of like menu of things that are more typical. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of appetite, at least not for me, to create some bespoke exotic system that no other communities ever tried before. But I think you can probably say, listen, out of municipalities that are in this kind of like $50,000 to $100,000 range, these are 80% of the communities are one of these types of things, and then we can go from there. Is that a fair representation of what we're looking for here?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to know, what others are doing, how they've delineated it. And if there have been discussions, like you had mentioned, an ordinance that was discussed and maybe written out, but then in the end, they didn't change the elections. What was their thinking? Because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. At least we'll know their pathways, mental pathways, and we may make a different decision because we're different people and different times. But I think it is really helpful to kind of drill down. We all are taking this very seriously. We realize the importance of laying the brickwork and the foundation as well as we can. So those things help us.
So Ron, I don't know you well enough to know, was that pause like concern, or that's how you process what?
No, it's just philosophy of boardmanship and leadership. I won't say never because I might be convinced, but a commissioner mayor should never be in process of day-to-day operations. They are budget and policy. Day-to-day operations fall on staff. I mean, that's what I'm used to. That doesn't mean that that's right, but that's, to have what you were saying about a commissioner oversight or whatever for a department. Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely. They might have a department maybe want to talk to them or whatever to get information, but never would a commissioner should be in even the perception of usurping the authority of the management team. Never.
So you're thinking a layer down. Like when I was suggesting, hey, send us this menu of available options. You're thinking a layer down on like, all right, what's sound policy and what's not.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Very good.
Yeah.
Caroline's the one that's did our research early on. So Caroline, by September 19th, we can provide that. But what kind of information you can find on because I think you could probably give some examples of clips from charters that have the different forms as far as, because I think people would like to see what the actual words are in the charter.
Mm-hmm.
And then also maybe would you pick up some of the issues just off the internet as far as the back and forth of why they would propose something?
I can certainly get you descriptions of different, how different charters are setting up their system, but their government. Why they chose that may or may not be, I might not be able to find, simply because if they've been doing it for 100 years, it's going to be hard for me to find out why they chose it 100 years ago. But what I was thinking is that I will look for some that have changed in modern times and see if there's some more background on why they made that change. And I can try to do that. I am a little hesitant to promise you that I can tell you why.
I'll just speak for myself, and please, y'all correct me. I'm not looking for why, and I'm not looking for good or bad. I'm just looking for what's out there. There's going to be a spectrum between mayor rules with an iron fist and city manager does everything. There's going to be some, and that's kind of what I'm just looking at. That's all I want to do.
So
that I can do.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, board members, the best thing to do would be direct me to reach out to the Florida League of Cities. And there's about 410 cities, villages, and towns in the state of Florida. And inside Florida, one of the senior staff of the Florida League of Cities also handles the FCCMA, which is the Florida City County Management Association. So it's kind of a joint venture. We could request one of their senior staff provide a presentation to y'all, probably 15 to 20 minutes. They could join virtually from Tallahassee and give kind of an overview of the different types of government that we see across all of the cities in the state of Florida. And the pros and the cons of each, and then answer your questions. We could probably do that in 30 minutes of one of your next meetings if you so desire.
Sounds fabulous.
Great.
They're willing to do that for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think,
We paid them a lot of money, so they should be more than willing to do that for us. So,
and Cecile, speak freely here, like you mentioned that you wanted to see the language of what these charters look like that accomplish those things. So that you want to see that, right?
Yes.
That's not as important to me, but by all means, like she needs to see that stuff.
We can do
So
both. We can do that, but I think that having someone from the League of Cities.
Once you look up to see who's doing what, it'll be right there. So just capture it.
As far as elections go, we could provide you with a link to the meeting where they had the discussion the last time they spoke
good.
about changing the dates. And I can give you exactly what minute to go to, and that way you don't have to watch the whole meeting, but you can at least get the idea of what they were discussing during that period of time.
Will money be saved if we move the elections to the general election because of efficiencies?
I doubt it.
We got a question.
Well, the city of Panama City has 2 elections. You have, in your charter currently calls it a primary and general, but these terms now are not used. Primary are considered partisan elections. If you move to the general November election, hypothetically, if you have a runoff, the question becomes, when is your runoff? There's 2 cities in our county have moved to just a general election. They do not have a runoff. So there's a lot of questions. Long story short, it may. Depends on how lengthy your ballot. When the city doesn't have but 2 contests on a ballot, it doesn't cost them anything because we have, we call it real estate on the ballot. So it doesn't cost the city anything. But if a city decides to put amendments or resolutions or ordinances or whatever you may call them, it may lengthen the ballot for those residents or those voters. And that may cause a countywide ballot to be from a 1-page to a 4-page. Somebody has to forward that bill. And if it's because of one municipality, it would cost the cities money. But there's a lot of conversation when it comes to saving elections.
is, Mr. Cow, isn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we pay for the spring elections, but if we, regardless of whether there's 1 or 2 items on there, because we're hiring y'all in the spring for special elections, not with a normal cycle. If we were to move to August, November, or just November, we would be part of a larger election, and there would be some savings, but not a lot. That's my understanding.
If all things equal, it would cost the city no money to go to the general election because it's a countywide ballot. The county will force all the bills. We are a countywide elections. So if the city wants to move to a general ballot, all else equal, city would not pay for anything except for qualifying fees and all the other minutia stuff. But in generalizing, there is a cost savings. There's a lot of benefits, but also comes with what are you trying to accomplish. But in short, you could potentially cost the city no money to move to a general election. Currently, you're paying for your own special elections in April and May.
And what does
Of
that
the odd
run?
year, of the odd year.
The odd year.
And what does that run?
It has varied from 20,000 to 40,000 over the past 3 cycles.
Most of it would be interesting to listen to the discussion on that issue, but most of the discussion was more along the lines of you'd get more voters out if it was on the general election dates rather than a special primary. Or the discussion was, yeah, but people that come for the special dates in April, they're really focused on local issues, and they're not showing up just because they showed up to vote in the primary or the presidential elections, and they aren't. So it's more, how many voters, and are the voters really focused on local issues? That was kind of the discussion primarily, and then the commission decided it wasn't time to take action.
Help me set an expectation here. One is, just now that we're looking at the time, not that I have any heart out, as we do these discussions, and now we're talking about on the October 2nd, having a presentation from the League of Cities, I think we have an hour penciled in for this, or is it 2?
We actually have it blocked for 2 hours from 12 to 2.
Like, do you guys think 2 hours, should be more than, I don't think more than 2, but 2 hours kind of a reasonable expectation for us to go through this stuff? Okay. I had it in my head it was an hour, and I'm like, we flew through an hour today, and there's no way we're going to be able to discuss this stuff in 60 minutes.
We could shift it back to 11 if you.
Not what I'm
to be done
suggesting.
by 1.
My own, I just need to make sure it's on my calendar from 12 to 2, which I think you sent out the invite, but
Yes.
okay. So that's that.
And if we don't get through in 2 hours, we got another meeting coming. I mean,
Yeah.
Y'all could also schedule additional
meetings.
special meetings if you so desire.
Absolutely.
So we'll get some kind of menu guide of different governance structures in 2 weeks. We come into the meeting on October 2nd, having reviewed that, having given that some thought, and the League of Cities will hopefully be able to present something else at the same time. At that meeting, we can discuss those governance structures and hopefully walk out with something for Nevin to put pen to paper on that we could then read in the interim and walk into the next meeting with hopefully something that we could, not necessarily approve, but like have a solid basis and then move on to the next thing. Is that kind of the idea?
And that's the flow. So when we get through with section 2 and Nevin and his team draft it, then that comes back to us just to make sure that that's what we had in mind. So are we going to vote that we're done with section 2? Are we going to wait till we get to the end to make sure we don't have to go back to section 2 for something that comes up in section 13?
Yeah, I think
So I think we need to have the whole document. It's going to be more work for Nevin, I think, but.
Hold on. I have a suggestion. I read biographies and history all the time, and for some reason I've been reading James Madison. And but what they did is that they acted as a committee of the whole, and then they would approve a section with the right at the end to come back and change it at any time. So it was never like they approved it and we're never going to come back and revisit, which drove some of them nuts because they wanted to approve it and not think about it anymore, but then they'd keep coming back. So you raised a good point, but I think logically you're going to want to revisit something
absolutely.
as you go along just because of new information and you've thought about it.
Yeah, interconnectedness is not always readily clear the first time. And when you get down the road, you're like, hey, that's, a direct link to something else.
And for clarification for me, other than a federal court case or a state court case, charter trumps ordinances, correct?
The charter.
Say that the commission last Tuesday voted for that elections thing and we wanted it to be different. What happens?
Oh, you mean
If the commission passes an ordinance,
the charter's your constitution.
okay,
So it's the ordinances have to be, quote,
In line with-
constitutional, have to be in
Okay.
line.
But maybe make sure I understand. I don't think there's a legal requirement that we have a charter at all. Is there? No, this is theoretical.
no, you have to, by statute, you have to have a charter.
Have you?
You can have something as loose as the citizens will elect a city commission and they can do whatever they want. As long as it doesn't go against state or federal law.
Your charter would, there
We
is
can
a
have to have the
statute.
boundaries. At minimum, it has to have set city boundaries.
Yeah. And then the
Like
statute.
literal boundaries.
Article
I get that.
Yeah, you need Article 1.
Right. That says you have jurisdiction over this municipality. I get that. But absent that,
That was one of my questions to somebody was, do we even need a charter? Yeah, we gotta
It's a
have,
great thought exercise, right?
yeah, we gotta have.
Good news,
one.
guys, we're no charter. No, I get it.
Your basic authority for a city comes from the state legislature. So there's statutes that say this is what cities can do. So then the question is, well, what do you need in addition to that?
Right. So everything that we're doing is guardrails, parameters, clarification, that type of stuff.
So
And then all the day-to-day. Okay.
I'll think about that more.
So currently the charter doesn't clearly define when the election has to be. It just says there has to be one.
Correct.
It can be adjusted by ordinance right now.
Yes, it can be adjusted by ordinance.
Except there's language in there about the runoffs. So you could potentially in the charter review, amend that. For example, one of the, if you did entertain moving to August and November in alignment with gubernatorial and presidential election terms, a recent city, I can't remember which one it was, made a change. And what they did was so right now the charter says if you have more than 3 candidates, and in April, if no one gets 50% plus 1, then the top 2 advance to a runoff. However, if one of them gets 50% plus 1, it's over in April. Well, even in August, sometimes, you have lower turnouts than you do. Obviously, November is the largest type of turnout there is. So, the city that recently made modifications was they still did the August primary, but if only 2 candidates qualified, then there was no election in August. Those 2 candidates advanced to November. If you had 3 or 4 qualify for the election, then all 4 of them or all 3 of them go on in August, and the top 2 vote getters, regardless of the amount, go to November. Like you have an election in November no matter what. So even if one got 80% and one got 20% in August, those top 2 advance to November. Right now, the charter does say that the top 2, unless it's 50% plus 1, 30 days later, there is thoughts that that's a really quick trend. I mean, like literally by the time you're even done certifying the prior election, it's already they're under pressure to start mailing the absentee ballots for the runoff. So 30 days is, in a lot of people's mind, you think it's the city's kind of getting away from that because that's a really quick runoff election.
And it would also be a charter change.
Correct.
If for some reason the city wanted to go to a plurality, so in other words, whoever gets the most votes wins. So you could get 22% of the votes, and if there were 5 candidates, if you got 22, you would win. That is legally permissible. I'm not saying it's good policy or that's something what ought to be done, but that's what happens by default sometimes if you have a political primary and there's no opposition in the other party. Whoever wins the primary, which is typically a plurality, they then run unopposed.
Can you give us some examples of cities that have that model where they don't do a runoff?
Yeah,
Like the elections in November, and to Nevin's point, whoever's the top vote getter, even if it's 23%, and if you have 7 people in a race, someone could get 22% and win.
We will.
It's majority rules.
That's not majority. That's not morality or plurality. Yes.
And once you have that information and you kind of know where the jurisdictions are, of course, you all can do your own research too to see if you can pick up newspaper articles or what the chatter was about some of the different policy issues. But we'll let you do that.
The other sort of research project education that I need, and I'm going to imagine the other board members need, is how municipal finances work. As I've barely begun to dug into this through Alan and Josh, it's a whole different animal that very few people seem to understand. And so as we're talking about the fiscal issues, I think we're going to have some understanding of where money comes from, where it goes, how we get support from state and federal. I mean, that hard to have that discussion. Now, granted, that sounds like it's going to be several months from now, but just putting that on y'all's radar.
I'm sure there's some type of resource out there on the different type of funding.
Yeah, she's sitting to your left.
Yeah. I do know this, so from an accounting standpoint, the whatever the code we use for like police up here is the same one that like Miami's going to use. So I don't know if code is the right term, but what's the
General
word?
accounting.
General, yeah, but there's a term for it. Darn
Chart of accounts.
it, chart of accounts. So
Yeah, I'm not thinking necessarily that level of detail, but it just, I mean, up until this is even came up, like, I didn't even know where the city gets its money from. Like, humbly, I don't know. And so I'm getting a little bit of an understanding of that, but I think we all need to have an understanding
Well,
of
it's
the high level
interesting.
things.
So you might be interested in, let's say that the city generates $20 million. But how much comes from the merchant tax? How much comes from ad valorem taxation? How much comes from state revenue sharing? That type of basic
Is
information.
there an interest in a copy of the financial statements?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the narratives in there are quite interesting.
Right.
I can bring that next meeting.
And maybe go over it with us so we can.
Maybe you want that.
I know that we're limited to 2 hours, but it sounds like we have an appetite for specialist presentations during
Yeah.
each of these sort of.
And I'm
Agenda
willing
items.
to, if there's a need to go longer, up to 3 hours. I know it may not work with everyone's schedule and things they've got going. But if there's something really in depth that we really want to come out the other end of it and not wait to a second or third meeting. I think we'd just be flexible.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that be done in the next 2 weeks. I think we're.
I'll bring you the financial statements. You can look through it and then you can decide where you want to focus. But I do have a governmental accounting 101 class that I can provide.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to use a phrase my dad used to use, I'd be like a monkey looking at a wristwatch. If you tell me I can read financials, but not that level of detail. Like, I need some context for just even where the stuff's coming and going. And
I think I heard him say
that.
that.
Probably did. Yeah. So
Sure thing.
just purely putting it on radar. I don't think any of us need to look at it, speak up between now and October 2nd.
No.
But, as that thing comes up, I think that's going to be something that we need to be educated on.
Absolutely. We can do that. I can. I don't know.
The royal
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
The royal way.
Okay, I would like to circle back to what Cecile said about the time frame. I think this has probably been the most curious meeting. We've had a lot of questions, right? And it's sparked even more questions further down the line. One, I would like to know if any of us have ideas for how to engage the public outside of this meeting structure. What is that going to look like between now and the next meeting? And then two, is it 3 hours? Is it 2 hours? I think leaving the flexibility open to, are we covering the right things? We're not allowing ourselves to get too far down a rabbit hole on any of this stuff right now, but I think the further we get into this, the larger the opportunity gets for us to get down rabbit holes. Or be intentional.
I will share with you guys, I guess this will be my role as the chair, and I've just seen a lot of board meetings. As long as the conversation's productive, I'll stay as long as we need to. If it starts becoming circuitous or redundant or whatever, then at that point, at some point, you just have to agree to disagree, right?
Right.
But, if we're moving the ball forward, we'll stay here as long as we need to.
I'm with that, as long as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But I like your
Yeah.
looking forward and for us to think, different ways that we can get out into the community. I think if we did that, possibly 1 or 2 times, at least 2 times.
Do you guys have any suggestions on getting more input from the citizenship?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, we could host a town hall, like we do with the commission, for the public. These two will love, giving up a Saturday morning, but so right now I do one myself and the 5 elected officials. Nevin comes in super casual mode, but the first Saturday every month, we host a town hall in the rotunda, and that's more for the citizens. The vertical. Yeah, I would say 15 people. I mean, most of them are ones that come to the commission meeting, but there's been a few additional ones. We have our third one is this coming Saturday. But the way it's been structured is our virtual workshops are more for the elected officials to communicate, not vote, not make decisions. And then the town halls are really strictly for the citizens to come in and talk about whatever they want as it relates to the city of Panama City, ask questions, express frustrations, give ideas. And so, Brandon's been to, I think, both of them so far. So, I mean, it's that could be one option. And I don't think you need to do one every month, but maybe we strategically plan 3 over the next 8 or 9 months for y'all to kind of like a third or something.
This is even on the table. This is not a loaded question. Would you guys feel supportive of like aligning participation on our issues with that type of meeting? Is that even an option? Or would you think it needs to be something independent? Like, would it make sense for basically as you're having that public comment period on Saturday, also say, and by the way, we're right in the middle of this charter review thing too. So, let's try to get more people there. Or do you think it needs to be something standalone?
I think we should do both.
I
We should
agree.
have something standalone and we should entice the people that are already turning up because they're paying attention.
The town, I'll talk to the mayor, but I mean, again, the town halls on the first Saturday are not like the workshops. The mayor and I kind of decide what they're going to
Yeah,
talk
that's a
about.
different animal. Yeah.
The town hall, like we just were like, all right, what do y'all think? Now, at the end of it, sometimes there'll be some back and forth with the elected officials, but obviously there's no voting. We were careful not even to try to get a consensus because it's not an official meeting. And so, you could conceivably combine, maybe y'all join, like every third one or something throughout this process. And that's something we solicit feedback on. I'll talk to the mayor. I would be surprised if he had any issues with that because he loves public participation.
Is there a way for us to do this meeting in a workshop style where it is broadcasted on YouTube? And
It is. You're right. Yeah, we're streaming. I don't know. Are we recording it?
Just recording, no streaming.
That's right. So we record, but starting next time we will be streaming because we're going to be on Zoom. Yeah.
I think that'd be an opportunity too for citizens to engage in the comment section. I know that was super important during some of the workshops.
I don't know that I'd have to figure out, I have to understand how that works because
They can't engage with us, but we
Yeah.
could potentially go back later and look at the comments.
They can always comment it. Type their
I
comments.
just don't know how I got to find out how do we save that? How do we collect that? But no, they will be able to interact with y'all starting with the next meeting because we're going to be utilizing
We
Zoom.
have some issues with the comments.
Yeah, comments, we have to be careful on that because I don't know how it works, with public records and it's a lot to stream, record, and then also people raising their hand wanting to potentially communicate during the public comment section. So I don't know about the comment things, but we can always say, hey, please send emails to us and we can set up an email address, charterreview@panamacity.gov and set that up so that if anybody emails that, the 5 of you and the 3 of us all get that email to solicit feedback from the public.
Well, I've seen different ways of controlling, and it's a wide broadcast and you really don't know what people are going to say. And you're trying to control the time and stuff like that. And I know several that I've participated in, you would have to write in your chat what your topic was. And then someone got on the phone and said, this have a short conversation with you. And then you were allowed to then, say your few words. It was sort of like culling through. Do you know what I mean? So unless someone's just intentionally want to just harm you and lie basically on what they're going to, then I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there that would do that. But, it was just a way to
I don't know that.
control the record.
Yeah, I don't know that I would want my staff deciding who gets to speak and who's not. I mean, really, so we do it with Monday morning with the manager. We use Zoom and people virtually raise their hand and then I recognize them. So I think what I would say, if they virtually raise their hand, the chairman would recognize them and they would be allowed to speak up to 3 or up to 5 minutes. And it's not really for us to decide who gets in. It would be up to him to say, hey, please mute this person if they're being belligerent and, or start talking about, unicorns or something.
So if I can make this request, and my wife tells me and Alan tells me I come across like a jerk. I promise I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we're an advisory board, but I guess it's still a board nonetheless. And so what I try to do is tell my boards to make decisions and then have staff help out with suggestions and things like that. So I think there's a very clear request to help us with public participation.
Absolutely.
So if you guys can come back at the next meeting and say, here's the suggestions that we have, whether it's aligning it with existing meetings. I mean, you've got a very willing board here that's willing to do our own time, have our own meetings, whatever else. So if please like give us suggestions for, we can hold it here, we can do it with that. And then, that's the objective is what can we do to get more public participation? And then are you all okay with that? And then
Yes.
let them figure this problem out. Like, I know the problem, you guys help with the solution. Is that fair?
Including, having a meeting outside of the parameters of this office, of this building, is something that I think we should consider also.
I just think only because we are required to record them, like we just got to keep in mind the technology.
Truly, I mean, y'all know the legal parameters of those things. So if you say, that's a great idea, Brandon, but we can't do it that, I get it. I totally understand that. But it would be the type of thing where you say, hey, I can organize this thing for you here. If Cecile wants to go there, we can set this up for you. I guess that's our request is to come up with.
My experience has been, you can take your dog and pony show on the road and you just have, portable thing, or I don't know, what connecting with the city and your processes, if that would work. But we've done things like that.
So to make the, I guess, request clear to staff, what would you like to see at the next meeting as far as an outcome for you?
Well, different ways for us to do it. And sometimes it's going to be what you've done before, that you're very comfortable with. And you'll say, like you brought the example of you having the town halls. So that would be one way for us to have a town hall specific to us, our issues. And the other one was mentioned, make an announcement at the end of the town halls that you already have with the city commissioners. And a third thing is like take it out into the community. I think that would be extremely well received. And I think would generate a lot of interest, especially to get people, notice.
One thing you might think about too, we're doing something new this year, which is virtual workshops, and the commissioners are all Zoom in, and there's no decisions made, no votes taken, but they talk. There's no public either. It's been interesting, but that format may work well for, like, if Jan were to give a government accounting 101, she can then share her screen and everyone's seeing the same thing. And then you have the little boxes of the individuals that are on it, but it would just be the U5. And then typically, we could be in different screens, but typically staff is together. But whether it's Government 101 or some other specialized thing that you want information on, that way not all the information's being dumped in one long meeting. It's kind of parceled out and it's recorded, and you can tell people to go look at it. You can go back and look at it. Just that would be an idea that that has just started this last few months with us.
So two things. One is I'd like to see on the agenda for the next time, just a general staff update. Can we do that?
On public participation options?
Well, a standing agenda item is just going to have some kind of level like staff updates, and then we can fill it out from there.
Okay, well, I have a whole list here that.
No, I'm talking big picture here. So like,
Okay.
as we do agendas, I would think that after we do approval of minutes, let's have item 6 be a standing, basically like staff update.
Okay,
We can fill out what those updates are, but then you guys can tell us where we are with things and all that good stuff. That may be where the League of Cities presentation is or whatever's in there. And then I think what the request is from the board is that for the next meeting, there's a staff update on suggestions for increased public participation.
okay. Everything?
Yes.
Nevin, were you just mentioning that we could potentially do a workshop instead of a formal
virtual.
meeting, a virtual workshop? where
Not
we do?
instead of. in,
In addition
that's just,
to-
yeah, in addition to.
Yeah, because that way we can get the specialist presentation out of the way, or not have to do it at the meeting.
And we can, come to the meeting to make.
Come to the meeting have already been.
It's an idea.
I like that
get-
idea.
Because I was surprised how well it worked. Okay. Because the share the screen and you got the information and you talk through it and you're still able to ask questions during that process. And then but that was just another way to get information, not all at once, but then it is very public. You can go back and watch it anytime and it can be it's streamed as well.
So back to the comment I watch every one of them on YouTube, and I'm one commenting away. I think me and a few other people that like to attend meetings, but you can see the comments in the paper trail underneath of the YouTube video that's engaging, and you can go back to it. We could go back to it if there is comments out loud. They can't participate, but they can make comments under the video that could ask specific questions to drive engagement. That makes sense?
Yeah, I don't know how that works. So
So the problem we have with that is
Introduce yourself.
Cody Plainwood, Senior IT Manager of the city. So the problem we run into with that is while we're live streaming, the comments are live. We edit the videos afterwards, stabilize sound and cut off any, blank areas at the beginning and end and re-upload the video. All your live comments are lost at that point.
Gotcha.
They're still there. We can recover them, but they don't transfer to the new video. So it creates kind of a weird dual video issue.
Okay, so I did see that on a few things where they said they deleted all of our comments, and that explains a lot.
Don't delete them. They are still there. We can get them if needed, but they're harder to find unless you have that original YouTube link.
But Cody, when you upload it, then you can make additional comments at that point after you go back and watch it after the fact. And those comments do remain.
It does take us a couple of days to get that process done.
Okay.
Thank you, Cody.
But wouldn't it be possible for you, knowing that when you modify it, it's gonna drop out, you just save them? You save the chat, you save the comments, and just copy and paste it back in.
I'm not sure.
I go back to why modify it. What needs to be changed in the entire video that needs to be improved? Why modify from the original?
Usually some audio issues. Some people speak quieter and some people are louder. And so sometimes it's really hard to hear one person or another.
You can't hear.
Cut out a recess, like we may take a 15-minute recess at a commission meeting. They'll go in there and they'll put that so it's just almost instantaneous. They'll usually start live stream 10, 15 minutes kind of before the meeting to make sure that, they don't miss when it gavels in. And those are just little things like that.
I definitely had a problem listening to the YouTubes with just a quiet voice, and you're so frustrated to speak louder.
Yeah. That's what they're trying to do. And the county, just, sidebar, the county did put in some different mics in the last few months. So hopefully it's not as much of a problem anymore. So,
But I would think, see about if you could, copy the chat and then just paste it in some way.
We'll look into it, man.
Yeah, copy paste works. For dummies.
It's
not for IT.
dangerous.
It's not for IT people, but it's for the dummies.
Well, no, it's for lawyers.
That's what I said.
JP?
Nothing further.
So,
I'm good.
Ron?
I really appreciate you asking each of us what's on our mind and remembering what we said before. It's really helpful.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the trust in you guys and having me chair this. I think that's an important role, is to get everybody's feedback. The first two meetings have been fun. We haven't disagreed on anything yet. I'm sure that's not going to always be the case.
I'm saving it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Ron got everything in Cambridge. I will say, and I think we'll all do this, but I'll speak for me and Nevin here. I really want to try to get to a point when we're actually putting pen to paper on stuff that we do kind of review and at least have the substance where we want it. We may not agree on what it says, but I'll work directly with you, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but so that we're discussing actual policy and substance during these meetings rather than just wordsmithing things. So I think that'll be helpful. And then, I mean, I appreciate you guys as staff being so open on this stuff. You may leave here and go, oh my God, there are these people on this charter review and they don't know anything, but I do appreciate the education you guys have done, the willingness to go get the league and the financial education and humor us on some of our requests for how to do different meetings and things like that. Like we don't know. And so I appreciate what you guys are doing.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Except for- All right. All right. Second, acclamation, Cecile. There we go. All right. Thank you guys.